You know, there's a peculiar thing happening in the world right now, and perhaps you've sensed it. People who are awake, not in the trendy sense, not in the sense of slogans or spiritual jargon, but awake in the old, eternal sense, are quietly vanishing, not dying, not withdrawing in bitterness, not hiding out of fear, but disappearing in an entirely different way. The way a wave dissolves back into the ocean, not because it was forced to, but because it finally remembered what it really was. And if you're listening to this, there is a chance you felt this pull yourself. A strange sense of growing more distant from the noise of society, as if you're watching the world through a slightly translucent veil, not disconnected, not numb, just less compelled to participate in the collective performance. Let me explain what I mean. You see, society, any society, is a grand theater. A marvelous, ridiculous, beautiful, tragic comedy in which we all play parts we didn't audition for, speaking lines we didn't write, chasing goals no one fully understands. From the moment you are born, a costume is slipped over your head, a script shoved into your hands, and the directors, all very concerned and authoritative, begin instructing you on how to walk, how to talk, how to think, how to be a proper someone. But those who are spiritually awake begin to notice something unusual. They realize the script is optional, the costume temporary. The directors, those serious, urgent voices, are merely other actors who have forgotten they're in a play. And once you see the stage for what it is, once you recognize the makeup and the props and the artificial lighting, you cannot go back to pretending it's all real. You can keep playing, of course. You can enjoy the dance, laugh at the jokes, admire the scenery. But you cannot believe in the seriousness of the performance in quite the same way again. And this soft unraveling of the illusion is the beginning of the disappearance. Not an escape from the world, but an escape from the spell of the world. There's a difference. Most people think awakening means you float away into some celestial bliss, or that you gain superhuman serenity, or that you magically transcend all your flaws and fears. Not at all. Awakening is simply understanding the game as a game. It is seeing the machinery behind the curtain. It is recognizing that the dramas we cling to, our social standings, our arguments, our victories, our humiliations, are made of the same ephemeral substance as dreams. Beautiful, yes. Moving, yes, but not ultimately real. And when you see this, you begin to behave differently. You speak less. Not because you are withdrawing, but because you now understand that most conversations are negotiations between masks. You chase less. Not because you lack ambition, but because you see that trying to impress phantoms is a strange way to spend a life. You crave less validation, not because you have become superior, but because you see how desperately the world seeks approval for identities that dissolve the moment you look closely at them. And suddenly, almost accidentally, you become quiet, not shy, not introverted, but quiet in a way that unsettles people who've only known noise. Quiet in the way a mountain is quiet. Quiet in the way deep water is quiet. Quiet in the way awareness itself is quiet. And society doesn't quite know what to do with that, because society depends on people playing their parts, enthusiastically, unquestioningly, predictably. But the awake person is unpredictable, not in behavior, but in allegiance. They are no longer loyal to the collective trance. They don't react the way others expect them to. They don't get angry at the same things. They don't join in the same panics. They don't reinforce the same illusions. They become, in a sense, unmarketable. You can't sell much to someone who sees through desire. You can't manipulate someone who sees the hook behind the bait. You can't alarm someone who knows fear is just a story the mind tells itself. And so they slip quietly out of society's grasp, not by running away, but by no longer clinging. Some move to the edges of the world, literal or metaphorical. Some live in cities, but dwell in a different dimension of attention. Some continue their ordinary lives, but inwardly sit atop a mountain, watching clouds drift by. And yet, if you observed them, if you sat beside one of these quietly disappearing people, you might not notice anything extraordinary at all. They may be folding laundry, or stirring soup, or driving to work, or paying bills, or laughing with friends, but there is something unmistakable in their presence, something like the stillness at the center of a spinning wheel, a kind of spaciousness, a non-resistance, a subtle delight in the absurdity of things, a softness in the eyes that says, "Yes, yes, I know this dream well, let's enjoy it while it lasts." You might speak to them and feel mysteriously calmer afterward, as though they absorbed your tension without even trying. You might sense that they are listening to something deeper than your words. And you might notice that after the conversation ends, they leave behind a silence, a good silence, a nourishing silence, the kind that feels like an open window in a stuffy room. This disappearance, it is not a removal from life, but a return to it. A return to authenticity, to candidness, to a slower, truer rhythm. So why does it look like a disappearance? Because so much of society is built on noise, on acceleration, on the perpetual hum of striving and comparison. When you stop feeding that machine, you fall out of its broadcast range. You become a faint signal, a quiet station playing an entirely different frequency, the frequency of presence. And when you tune into that frequency long enough, you no longer need the world to echo you back. You no longer require the mirror of public identity to reassure you of your existence. You simply are, as natural as the tide, as unhurried as a tree, as effortless as breathing. Now, let's go deeper. When you simply are, without the constant need to verify your being through achievement, approval, or performance, you begin to drift into a different mode of existence, a quieter one, a gentler one, a mode that society rarely celebrates because it cannot easily measure it, monetize it, or parade it as progress. And this is why awakened people appear to disappear. They slip out of the metrics. You see, society keeps score with strange instruments: followers, income, visibility, influence, productivity, output, significance, legacy. These are treated as spiritual barometers, as if the soul were some sort of stock portfolio. But when you wake up, you realize these are only symbols, markers on a map that doesn't actually lead anywhere, shadows pretending to be mountains. And because you no longer take them seriously, you wander off the map entirely, not geographically, but psychologically, spiritually. You begin to move in the world as someone who is no longer trying to become anything. And that, you see, is extremely peculiar to people who are always becoming. They cannot understand someone who simply exists, because the world has convinced itself that existence is not enough, that one must constantly justify, enhance, upgrade, or optimize oneself to earn the right to breathe. But awakened people have discovered the secret. There is no one to optimize. No fixed entity to improve, no permanent self that can be perfected. Instead, there is a dance, a flowing, shifting, shimmering field of sensations and thoughts and experiences that come and go like weather. And to cling to any of it as me is like trying to claim ownership of a passing cloud. So the awakening begins with seeing the illusion, but it deepens with laughing at the impulse to cling to it. And from this laughter comes a very quiet freedom. A freedom that does not shout. A freedom that does not announce itself on social media. A freedom that does not require a certificate or a title. A freedom that does not come packaged as enlightenment or achievement. A freedom that is small, intimate, delicate, like the feeling of warm sunlight on your face when no one else is around to witness it. The more one tastes this freedom, the less interested one becomes in the collective hustle. It is like stepping out of a crowded, noisy marketplace into the still air of a forest. You can hear the wind again. You can hear your own footsteps. You can hear the silence under everything. And once you've heard that silence, you wonder how you ever tolerated the noise. This is why many awakened people seem to withdraw from society. It's not because they judge it, not because they think themselves superior, not because they wish to escape responsibility. No, it's because their inner volume has changed. They no longer vibrate at the frequency of urgency, fear, competition, or pretense. They no longer respond to the bait of drama. They no longer find nourishment in arguments or ideological battles. They no longer depend on external noise to drown out internal unease. In fact, they've discovered that the unease disappears entirely when one stops running from it, and so they become comfortable with stillness, comfortable with not knowing, comfortable with not winning, comfortable with not being recognized, comfortable with being invisible. But invisibility is not the same as absence. Invisibility simply means you are no longer projecting the old image. You've stopped polishing the mask. You've stopped maintaining a performance. You are still here, more here than ever, but you are no longer here as someone. You are here as presence, as awareness, as the quiet background in which all things appear. This presence does not require an audience. It does not demand applause. It does not insist on being seen. It is content to be the sky instead of the weather. Yet this quiet presence, though subtle, has a profound effect on the world. If you sit beside a person who is at peace with themselves, something in you begins to relax. If you speak with someone who has stopped pretending, you may feel strangely invited to drop your own pretense. If you spend time near someone who no longer clings, you may find that your own grip begins to soften. Awakened people don't impose themselves. They emanate. They don't preach. They radiate. They don't persuade. They embody. And this embodiment is their disappearance. It is the dissolution of the egoic image into the simple presence of being. But the world, of course, is suspicious of such people. Not overtly, not intentionally, but because society depends on people being slightly anxious, slightly insecure, slightly off balance. It needs you to keep striving, keep competing, keep proving, keep consuming, keep chasing the mirage. An awakened person, by contrast, chases nothing. Their desires are gentle, their ambitions are soft, their fears are transparent, their identities are fluid, and so they become unintelligible to a world that speaks the language of tension. To the unawakened, they seem slow, lazy, detached, unmotivated, difficult to categorize, hard to influence, impossible to predict. But in truth, they are simply operating from a deeper center, a center that does not move with the winds of opinion, a center that does not collapse under pressure, a center that does not bargain with insecurity. And when you live from such a center, you no longer require the scaffolding of social identity to hold you up. You stand like a tree, not because you resist the wind, but because you bend with it. You flow like water, not because you are passive, but because you are unresisting. You burn like a flame, not because you fight the darkness, but because illumination is your nature. And when you live this way, you become less visible to those looking only for drama, conflict, or excitement. You become invisible to the noisemakers, invisible to the fear traders, invisible to the identity merchants, invisible to the world that recognizes only surfaces. But this disappearance is not an ending. It is a beginning, a different kind of life, a deeper kind of participation. For when you step out of the trance, you do not become less alive. You become more alive. And strangely enough, it is only from outside the trance that you can finally love the world without being devoured by it, because now you can see it clearly. To see the world clearly is not to reject it. It is to gaze upon it with fresh eyes, as if you'd been walking through a fog your entire life, and suddenly the air has become crisp. You notice details you overlooked before. The way people rush through their days as though chased by some invisible predator, the way conversations circle endlessly around complaints, the way ambitions are shaped more by fear than by desire, the way identities are built from borrowed ideas like houses assembled out of mirrors. You look and you see that most people are not living. They are defending themselves from the idea of life. And this recognition brings a kind of tenderness. You do not condemn. You do not scold. You simply understand that the human mind is a marvelous but mischievous thing. It invents cages where none exist, then panics when it feels confined. When you awaken, you stop trying to break everyone else out of their cages. You realize they're only held shut by imagination, and imagination cannot be forced open from the outside. You simply leave your own cage quietly and wait, patiently, gently, for anyone who might notice the open door. This too is part of the disappearance. A shift from trying to change people to simply seeing them, from trying to convince to simply being a presence in which clarity can arise. People sometimes ask me, shouldn't awakened individuals try to fix society? And I say, fix it. Have you ever tried to fix a mirage? Society is not a solid thing, it is a pattern, a rhythm, a dance of human fears and hopes and assumptions. You cannot fix a dance. You can only learn its steps or step aside when the music no longer moves you. Awakened people step aside, not out of apathy, but out of a deeper responsibility to truth. For when you are no longer captivated by the drama of the world, you begin to participate in life in a different way, not as a character in a frantic play, but as an awareness observing the unfolding. Imagine two people sitting by a river. One sees only the surface, the ripples, the reflections, the disturbances. The other sees the current beneath, the silent force guiding everything along. The awakened person lives from the current, not the ripples. And this makes their life very unusual. They make decisions not out of fear, but out of intuition, not out of obligation, but out of alignment, not out of habit, but out of presence. And these decisions often confuse others. Why did you leave that job? Why did you end that relationship? Why did you move away? Why did you withdraw from drama? Why did you stop defending yourself? Why did you stop arguing? Why did you stop trying to prove your worth? Because once you've tasted inner freedom, even for a moment, you cannot go back to living on crumbs. You choose spaciousness. You choose honesty. You choose peace. You choose authenticity. Not as moral virtues, but as natural preferences. A bird does not need a moral code to choose the open sky. It simply flies because that is its nature. Likewise, an awakened person does not avoid drama because they are above it. They avoid drama because it feels foreign, unnatural, like trying to wear shoes 2 sizes too small. And so they drift towards simpler things, not in a performative, ascetic way, but in a very ordinary human way. They enjoy slow mornings. They enjoy unremarkable afternoons. They enjoy conversations without agendas. They enjoy meals without distraction. They enjoy the company of those who expect nothing from them at all. Their lives may appear small from the outside, but inwardly they are vast. It's like comparing a tiny cup of water to a deep, silent lake, and others begin to sense this depth. They may not understand it consciously, but they feel it intuitively. They feel calmer around you even if they don't know why. They speak more softly. They confess more honestly. They breathe more easily. But they also feel unsettled sometimes, because your presence holds up a silent mirror, not a mirror of judgment, but a mirror of clarity. And clarity can be uncomfortable for those accustomed to distortion. This is another way awakened people disappear. They stop participating in collective illusions. When everyone around you insists that the emperor is wearing magnificent clothes, and you quietly notice he's naked, you learn to smile gently and save your observations for those who are ready. Not everyone wants the truth. Not everyone is prepared for silence. Not everyone can handle stillness. Not everyone is comfortable with freedom. And so, awakened individuals gather in small circles, or walk alone, or remain on the outskirts of the noise, like watchful mountains. They disappear into forests, into little rituals, into ordinary routines, into creative expressions, into contemplative solitude. And this disappearance is not a loss to the world. It is a blessing, for the world needs people who are not trembling inside people who are not enslaved by opinion, people who are not bargaining for approval, people who have made peace with themselves. These people become the quiet pulse of humanity, the hidden root system beneath the forest, the underground springs that keep everything alive. The irony is that though they seem to disappear, their influence becomes more profound, not through force, but through example, not through noise, but through resonance. They become the kind of people whose presence lingers long after they've left the room, the kind of people who say little but mean much, the kind of people who remind you of something you didn't realize you'd forgotten, being itself your own being.